Good to go? Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on Facebook. A live Q&A. We'll talk about the snow, the wind, and the cold. We have the triple threat coming our way. Look, this isn't a big snow. I don't want you to think this is going to be a huge snow, but it is some snow, and it's going to come with wind and some brutal cold. I'll set you up with kind of the big picture here, and then we'll answer your questions. So you can hop into the comments section and let me know what you think. Can I get that? Thank you, Kaylee. All right. That's how I'm going to get your questions. All right, so let me set things up. First, the snow component to this. It may actually start as a little bit of mix, like rain-snow mix, briefly. I'm not expecting much, if any, rain out of this, but it's a possibility, probably 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Thursday morning. It would be light, be patchy. We have to watch that, though, because it'll get so cold so quick that if there is actually a little more rain than we think and you have a damp road, that would turn to ice. So let's just watch that in the morning. Otherwise, it's late morning, afternoon, that it's all snow, and it ends early evening. In St. Louis, I'm thinking 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the bulk of the accumulation. It's not huge totals, 1 to 4 inches across the region. In St. Louis Metro, probably 2 to 3 inches. But still, that snow coupled with the wind, it'll be blowing around pretty good. So by the time we get into the afternoon, Thursday afternoon, through Friday actually too, the gusts will be 30 to 45 miles an hour. They'll kind of slowly climb in the afternoon Thursday. And then actually when the snow ends Thursday evening, that's when the winds start getting even higher, 40, 45 mile an hour gusts. So even when the snow ends, blowing and drifting snow, but that wind and snow creates near blizzard-like conditions in that late morning and afternoon when the snow is falling. It reduces visibility. Blizzard's all about visibility, by the way, quarter mile or less for 3 hours or longer. I don't think we're going to reach that qualification, but even if you're close to it, it's a distraction and a travel hazard. This is going to be some dramatic cold air too. We go from 33 at 8 a.m. to 4 by 5 o'clock on Thursday. It could get to 4 earlier too. I mean, the drop in temperatures is going to be so sharp and dramatic. Sam said it was abrupt, and I think that's a good term for it. And then you have these dangerous wind chills. That would be from Thursday evening through Friday night, minus 15 to minus 30 on the wind chills. All right, hi from Rosedale, Maryland. Antonio is joining us. We even have folks in Maryland joining us. Thank you. Beginning at what time from Sharon Foot? So I think 7 to 11 a.m. is this kind of patchy little light mix or all snow. And then 11 a.m. through about 5 p.m. is when we see most of it, Sharon. So let me show you this. You'll get a good idea of why I'm saying that maybe 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. there's something ahead of the main area snow. So this is going from tonight, from 9 o'clock through tomorrow morning. Here's 8 a.m. This is our main accumulating snow. But some of the models, and not all of them agree, some of them are putting this thin band, a little burst of snow or mix out in the morning there. So that's why I say that's a possibility of when it could start. But again, I think it's going to be more in that 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. that we get the bulk of the accumulation. All right. Ed Wimberly checking in. Pam Swain said, will I be fine going to work in the morning? Because I start at 5:30, I get off at 2, so I hope it won't be bad. Pam, 5:30, getting to work, no problem. You're going to even miss if this develops. Here's the problem. You said you get off at 2 o'clock. Well, there's noon. We're into the steady snow, and it's down to 14 degrees, and the winds are starting to pick up. Now, here's 3 o'clock. So when you're going home at 2 o'clock, you're dealing with blowing snow and maybe 1, 2, 2.5 inches of snow on the ground. And it's going to be that powdery type of snow blowing around, and we're down to 6 with a wind chill of minus 10. So it's not going to be a pleasant ride home. And it may be one of those things where you want to check in with us and check in on traffic and see, are there major problems developing? Should I postpone my trip home? Because what's going to happen is this blowing snow over time, if you drive on it, it'll compact because it's powdery at first, but it compacts. And then it's so cold, I mean, we're at 6 by 3 o'clock, that it hardens into kind of a sheet of ice. Hopefully that happens a little later as the temperatures continue to drop, but still, it's a possibility even at 2 o'clock for you. Look at this 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, that is, we're at 4 degrees. I mean, just absolutely frigid. Wilson said, Wilson Brandon, I'm driving back home to St. Louis from Springfield, Missouri. That's going to be Friday morning. Is that going to be safe? So that's a great question because the snow is completely done with, Wilson. You should be good to go. The only reason, because see, even the snow's done with here by 8 o'clock Thursday. And there's nothing, you're coming from Springfield to St. Louis, there's nothing falling. The problem is you just have to wonder, has that snow that compacts and turns into a sheet of ice, has that been cleared? Has that been salted and cleared? I'm hopeful it will, because the snow amounts are in that 1 to 4, 2 to 3 in the St. Louis metro. It's not a huge amount of snow on your travels. So I'm hopeful the DOT can take care of it for you by Friday morning. I would wake up, check in on local news there, check in on KMOV.com here, and just see what we're saying about how the roads are and how the DOT has hopefully cleared things out for you by Friday. Good question, though. Connor Hamilton checking in. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for checking in. Appreciate it. If you're just joining us, by the way, I'm Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton doing a live Q&A on Facebook. We've got winter weather coming our way in the form of snow, wind, and cold, and it all hits on Thursday and gets really cold too. Amounts, by the way, I've been saying 1 to 4 inches across the region, but generally 2 to 3 inches in the St. Louis metro here, and it is going to be windy. Check out the wind gust timeline. Not too bad in the morning. I mean, you notice that. But look at this, especially by 7 o'clock. So the snow's done with at that point, but that's when the gusts are kicking up to their highest, 40 to maybe 45 miles an hour in the evening. So during the snow in the afternoon, it's blowing around, but then it continues to blow because that powdery snow on the ground gets kicked up by those strong gusts in the evening. All right, let's get to some of your questions. Appreciate you hopping in here. I just want to make sure that you're prepared, and maybe you haven't seen one of our broadcasts on News 4, or maybe KMOV.com, the social media posts, or the KMOV weather app. We've got all those tools for you, but if you've missed it, I just want to make sure this doesn't catch you off guard. So fire away with those questions. All right, Susan said, my work never closes. Susan Gragzagonia, my work never closes. I know what you mean, Susan. I know what you mean. I got to be here. I'm going to be here tomorrow. I hope to make it home in my own bed, too. I'm not going to stay the night at a hotel downtown. Noah Brooks, can I take the day off? Noah, you work here, and just like Susan, your work doesn't stop. Noah's one of our talented photographers. No, we're going to need you. Although we do, by the way, for folks that don't know, we do have some reserved hotel rooms so that if it gets dicey and some people feel like they need to, they don't have to drive home. So our management's always taking care of us, and I know Noah would agree with us on that. David Hayes wants more snow. He says make it 6 to 8 inches. Can you imagine with the snow, the wind, and the cold, if we had 6 to 8 inches, this would be an absolute mess and a disaster. And the other thing is we're going to get these really cold temperatures. So when the snow ends Thursday evening, it's done by late afternoon, early evening, the temperatures just continue to plummet. And this is the low by Friday morning. So if we had 6, 8 inches of snow, it would just be iced over. Now, even the 2 to 3 inches we're going to get is iced over because we're down to -3 by Friday morning. That would be the first time in over 30 years to be below 0 in the month of December for St. Louis. But it's going to be windy. So Friday morning wind chills down to -26. It would be a disaster. I'm glad it's not more snow, but it is some snow. And that 1 to 4 across the area, 2 to 3 in the metro, if you don't clear it, it's going to compact and turn to ice, and it's going to be real messy. By the way, this is where the storm is now. Already some snow up in Iowa. That's really not our front, though. It's really this front. And behind this front is the cold Arctic air, and you can really see it. So there's Cheyenne at -12 now. Even Denver's now below 0. They're -1. Cheyenne, Wyoming was at 43. They dropped to 3 degrees. That's a 40-degree drop, and it happened in 30 minutes. I mean, the power and the abruptness of this cold air is really amazing and something we're going to have to deal with tomorrow. Darla Smith said, I like a little snow so I can play with it. My grandson build a snowman. So here's the good news, Darla. We'll get a little snow. The bad news is it's not good snow making or a snowman making snow because it's that powdery stuff. When the temperatures get really cold, it's really fine and powdery, and you try to clump it together and it just falls apart. So not fun, but I still hope you can try to have some brief fun with your grandson in the snow. That's part of the problem is you don't want to be out in this long because after the snow hits, it gets so cold. I don't think there's a whole lot of people that want to be sledding on Friday morning when the low is -3 and the wind chill's -26. I would advise against it. My kids will not be sledding on a Friday morning. All right, let's see. Maya Edmonds says it's dust. Yeah, it's like dust and powdery. She's talking about that powdery snow. You're absolutely right. But she wants more snow. Lisa Dale asks, what is flash freezing? So flash freezing can actually kind of refer to two things. Most of the time when you talk about flash freezing, you're talking about liquid water freezing really quickly because the temperatures drop so quickly. And that's something we at least want to keep an eye on here, 7, 8 in the morning, maybe 9 in the morning. As this band of little brief snow, this will be the main steady snow. But if this band develops and comes through with a little bit of rain early on, and it's enough to dampen the pavement, that temperature of 33, it drops down to 14 by noon, and all of a sudden that liquid on the pavement, instead of evaporating into the air, it freezes into ice, and now you have ice. So that's flash freezing. But flash freezing is another thing where you get just snow on the ground, and it's powdery, and it gets so cold. Here you are at 14 at noon. Here you are at 6 degrees at 3 o'clock. It gets so cold that it just starts to harden and ice up. So what snow is on the ground may be powdery for a little bit, but as that really frigid air moves in, it's going to harden and freeze over really quickly, flash freeze. Usually that term is referred to liquid freezing and creating ice, but in this case, the powdery snow is going to flash freeze in a way too and just harden into ice. Will it stick to the road? Payne Beckman wants to know. Bachman, sorry about that, Payne. That's a great question. It won't. It'll be blowing around. It's powdery, it's fine, and you've got gusts in the afternoon in the 25 to 35 mile per hour range. So it's going to be blowing it around. It's not going to stick to the road. So some of it will pile up, but then you'll see these drifts. So you'll see some areas where it looks like it's been cleared. That's just the wind that's cleared it. And then all of a sudden you'll see a drift where it's been piled up by that wind. It's actually going to be a big challenge to measure the snow and to get accurate readings, because you go out there with a ruler and there might be nothing somewhere, and then there's like a 4 or 5 inch pile over here. Well, it really wasn't 4 or 5 inches. It just drifted and became 4 or 5 inches. So what was it originally? Again, that's a challenge to try and figure out. We're going to have some of our snow observers measuring frequently, and then they wipe their snowboards, measure again, wipe the snowboard, measure again, and just add it all up. How does it look, from Laura Kenny? How does it look for Friday night? I have a daughter flying in from Florida at 9:30 on Friday night. Have a jacket for her, because that's your worry. You're going to be fine on the road, especially by Friday night. Friday morning, maybe some of the roads still haven't been cleared, especially if they compact into that ice. So Friday morning might be a little dicey, but by Friday night, I would expect DOT crews have cleared you off. And the snow, remember, is going to be done with by then. In fact, here is the end of the snow for St. Louis by 4 or 5 o'clock Thursday, and then completely out of here by 8 o'clock. So snow's done with, but it's super cold. You're talking about temperatures on Friday of -3 in the morning, and they'll reach only 7 in the afternoon. It'll be... It'll kick in here in a second. There, -3 and 7. Wind chills -15 to -30. So when you pick her up, make sure the car's running. And even in the car, she might be pretty cold and want a jacket. My parents are actually coming in on Saturday, and they've now live, at least, down in Sarasota, Florida, and they're going to fly in on Saturday. My dad shipped a jacket to us because he doesn't really have one. He has sweatshirts, but he doesn't have a jacket. So when you pick them up, try to make sure the car's extra warm, and otherwise I think you're going to be just fine traveling and getting there. Evelyn Weather says, is it true that snow doesn't reach the surface when it gets really cold? I've never heard that. No, these are going to be fine, small crystals, and they'll actually fracture a little bit because of the winds. When they batter against each other, they'll fracture into smaller pieces, but gravity will still drag them down to the ground. I don't think they'll pile up as much, these crystals, because of the fracturing, as they otherwise would. It's part of what makes forecasting the snow amounts really difficult. Let me explain what we're doing here with these snow amounts. And if you're just joining us, I'm doing a live Q&A trying to make sure that you're prepared and have all your questions answered for this cold snow and wind that hits on Thursday, and the cold lasts into Saturday morning. Here's the forecast. Generally 1 to 4 inches is what we're saying, 2 to 3 inches in the St. Louis metro. the way to arrive at these numbers is we look at how much liquid is going to come out of the clouds, and then we multiply by a conversion factor, because when water freezes, it grows. That's why when you have ice cubes in the freezer, they don't just plop out of the ice cube tray. They're kind of stuck, so you kind of have to break that tray up. It's because the water has expanded and it's real tight. So water expands when it freezes, crystals expand when they freeze, and so you have to apply some conversion rate between liquid and the snow. Usually around St. Louis, it's like 10 to 1, so you multiply by 10. So if you had, in this case, forecast of, let's say, 0.15 inches of liquid, 1/1500ths, you would multiply by 10, you get 1.5 inches. But this is going to be that powdery dry stuff, and so we think the conversion factor is going to be more like 15 to 17. It could be 20, it could be 22. And if we're wrong on that conversion factor, these numbers could be a little higher, could be a little lower. Bottom line is that conversion factor is really tough when you're dealing with something you don't get very often, this Arctic front that's going to bring in some rapidly very cold air. We're at 34 in St. Louis. Now it's 14 in Omaha, -2 in Denver, -16 in Rapid City. I mean, this is going to be a dramatic drop in temperatures. It's an Arctic front. And again, we don't get those often. Actually, especially don't get those often in December. But the last time we were below 0 in December in St. Louis was 1989. And the record low for tomorrow is that temperature from 1989 of -15. We're not going there. This is going to be Friday morning, actually. So Friday morning, we're going to -3. So we won't get a record out of this, but Friday morning's rock bottom of this cold snap at -3. And that cold air plays into how we forecast snow. Because of that conversion factor. Let's see. Geraldine Dennison wants to know, what time is the snow supposed to start in the Freeburg and Smithton area? Great question. So there's kind of 2 time ranges that I want to highlight for you. One is a little earlier in the morning if a band of snow develops. Not all the models agree with it. Let me show it to you in this hour-by-hour super predictor. See this right here? If that band does indeed develop, you could get a little burst of snow or a little burst of mix in Smithton and Freeburg, which is just southeast of St. Louis for those that don't know. And so you could maybe 9 in the morning start to see a little burst of snow, but this is the main snow. And if you're in Smithton, Freeburg, New Athens, St. Laborie, Belleville, you're looking at it starting probably around 11 a.m. And probably through 5 p.m. is when you'll see most of your accumulation. So you may see it a little on the early side with that thin band, but the bulk of this is really coming in the late morning and afternoon. Hey, guy, Brian Howardson's up in Wisconsin getting 3 to 6 inches. I know there's a lot of people on here who want more snow, but 3 to 6 inches with this cold and with this wind, ooh, that would be brutal. In fact, let me take a look and see up north. I'll bet they have, yeah, they do. They have blizzard warnings. So all that red is blizzard warnings, like in Iowa and Minnesota too. Like right up to some of the suburbs of Minneapolis. So you'd have like Des Moines here, Dubuque, almost parts of Minneapolis, all under blizzard warnings. And you even have blizzard warnings here in parts of Michigan. So that red is all blizzard warnings. That blizzard warning, what that really means is basically whiteout conditions. So if you were on the highway, you wouldn't be able to see the exit. You wouldn't know what's the lane and what's the shoulder. It's super dangerous. It's all about visibility. Technically, the definition of blizzard is 1/4 mile or less visibility for 3 hours or longer. There's where the storm is now, by the way. Sherry Portal said, so is tomorrow morning going to be okay to get out if needed? I'd say 2 things on that. One, we do have to watch for the chance of a little bit of rain. If we get a little drizzle and it's enough to dampen the pavement and the temperatures crash, that could freeze into ice. So that's going to be your worry. I don't think the roads are going to, if that doesn't come to fruition, I don't think the roads are going to be bad until probably 11 a.m. on. And even then, we're not talking like huge snow, but we're still talking about snow. The reason, by the way, Sherry, that there is that chance is this. Not all models agree on this thin band coming in early, but it's a possibility. I think little, if any, rain out of this because the temperatures are going to crash so quickly. We'll go from 33 and we'll drop below freezing. So I think a lot of this is just snow. If there's a little more rain than we're thinking and you get wet pavement, it could freeze over into some ice. I think that's going to be very isolated. Thank you to everybody who's hopped on here. I hope that this has been helpful for you. I'm going to give you one more kind of recap with the super predictor here and the timing, but I hope I've answered some questions and got you thinking about when to get out, when not to get out, how to play it safe, and what to pay attention to here. So here is Super Predictor. We're going in tomorrow morning. We're going to watch for a potential of a thin band, a little burst of snow or mix. Main snow accumulation is still off to the west. Here we are by noon, 11 a.m. through 5 p.m., bulk of the snow accumulation in St. Louis, but look at the temperature. We've crashed to 14 degrees. It's the powdery, dry type of snow that's blowing around with winds that only get stronger as the day goes on. Blowing snow, light snow at this point at 3 o'clock, 6 degrees. The snow is really starting to taper off from St. Louis towards Warrenton. You still got some light snow continuing off to the east, though, in Illinois, even through maybe 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in St. Louis, the snow is done. We're at 4 degrees, wind chills minus 18. The gusts are now up to 40 miles per hour. And then the snow is done Thursday evening, but it's blowing around as we get into some really cold air. Amounts 1 to 4 inches across the region, but generally 2 to 3 inches is what we're thinking in the metro. There might be some spots that get over 3 inches, maybe close to 4. And then I just want to show you this real quick. The coldest of this cold snap, it's going to be here, Friday morning, -3, Friday morning, and then the wind chill down around -26, some spots to -30. A huge thank you to anyone who hopped on just to be safe, be prepared. We want to make sure you're alert, and I hope I've answered your questions. I hope you all stay safe and tune into KOMOV Channel 4 tomorrow. We'll have